Lovely sound. People were back in that time. Antiquitech. What's left of it.
Built in the 13th and 14th century and then burnt down again and then rebuilt in the 16th and 17th century.
So we've got a level here, and then all of a sudden it falls off. I'd like to put my head in this one actually. I like the sound. I think the music, the organs, was designed as vibrations. The songs were designed as vibrations to wake us, to heal us. Yeah. April 4, 1826. 1800s, yeah. Well, this is when we came back.
1826, 1822, 1815, 1814.
1866.
Yeah, this one's 1844.
Yeah. Decent sized door. So this impressive looking facade has got some really deep down there windows. You got to go down just to the bottom of this, a meter into the ground. Clever, huh?
Was that just a tower?
Well, it's a good question, whether these towers were independent things. I mean, this tower also reminds me of the Glastonbury Tor and others. And yeah, I'm not sure whether it was just something that they had and then they tacked these on later, or it was an important part of the energy harvesting to have that height. Those items of Antiquitech up there. So these houses are possibly of the same vintage. Going downhill and oh, what's this? People really, they've had to dig like a well to reach that window, because yes, they probably wanted to get light into that first floor, basement. But yeah, imagine the water that must run in there. Can you see that? See that? You can believe what you like. For me, that used to be a ground floor window. This is a modern adaptation. This memorial stone here. Back with you in a sec. Clues and questions. This is facade. So this here is what we often see. But there's pretty good evidence, I think, of this simply being attached to the existing wall, just as a block set. And this is what they do, which is why these windows are recessed inside, because they would have been flush with the original wall. So again, this place here has got the giveaway glass tiles, which allow some light in. This is added in the 1800s, early 1900s, to give them some light downstairs. And that steel plate is covering another such hole. And this, I mean, the windows behind there are broken, damaged. It's just a mess behind there. And it's the whole way down the street. Huh? It's the whole way down the street. Whoa, that well's pretty well dug out by comparison, as you can see. They've only dug out, instead of having an entire section, they've got 2 sections. Yeah, they've got wildlife growing inside that one. Slight variation here. Same with these. And these. This. And then when you look over the road at that building there, you'll see, okay, the sun's a bit bright. 1 second. So that is a window arch. And there, not as much covered by the roadway. And there. This is the Warwick High Street. Welcome to Warwick. It's quite pretty actually, as high streets go. We've been rather impressed by it. Quaint. Oh yeah, look at that. Covered in now. And then there's some steps up, which...
The Warwickshire Yeomanry Museum is free.
Yeomanry. Alright, we should go and have a look inside. 1100 years, 1914 to 2014. Luke just pointed this out. I mean, it's 1 letter away from ether. Ethel Flay, Lady of the Mercians, and daughter of King Alfred the Great, founded a fortress at Wickham in AD 1914, which grew into the town of Warwick. Her conquest of the Viking Danelord secured the creation of the Kingdom of England. Wow, that's pretty significant if the history is true. 1914. Yeah. Okay, let's leave the 1,000-year story aside. There. I've got a vent in that gap. There's another one down there. And another one over there. So yeah, here's the evidence for you, the 4 steps up. And then 15 steps down.
I welcome you to the Museum of the Warwickshire Yeomanry. Right, if you'd like to come this way.
Good day.
If you take photographs, would you please account to put a donation in the box?
Sure.
Because we run on fresh air. The museum is run through a charitable trust.
Okay.
I'm Philip, I'm one of the trustees.
Hi, Philip.
Good to see you. And which country have you come from?
South Africa.
South Africa?
Yeah.
Ah, whereabouts?
Durban.
Durban. That's a bit further up from Cape Town.
Yeah.
So which coast is the Durban?
East Coast.
It's the East Coast.
Yeah. We like Cape Town and do spend time there, but...
This regiment sent a squadron of Warwickshire Imperial Yeomanry to South Africa, and it took 25 days from Liverpool to Ascension Island, and they called it Ascension Island, and then down to Cape Town, and from Cape Town to DR, and then across to Kimberley, and then up onto the Northern Cape Province in that area,
right,
fighting Brother Boer, and then into Orange Free State,
right,
Orange River Colony, depending which way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And there was we have a museum Facebook group here, and also a website, and the story of what happened I covered in 45 installments to coincide with when they were there.
Right.
During, I think it was 2 years back, we did it in 18 months.
Okay.
So here you have them coming back. Here you have them coming back from South Africa in 1901 on the Market Square.
So this is after the Second Boer War.
This is the Second Boer War, yes, not the 1881 Boer War.
Right.
This is the 1890. They were there from 1900 to 1901.
Right.
And they had it bad. When they got home, the press were interviewing them, and they were. One of the young men foolishly said, "Well, of course we were burning the rebels' farms," and of course that didn't go down very well.
No.
And they were guarding the railway line between Johannesburg and
Cape Town? Or-
no, the other way, cross country,
Oh,
towards Diamond Hill,
Okay.
and beyond to Delago Bay.
Okay.
And they were guarding. They were there was in the middle. There was a. Effectively, it became a garrison town, but it was initially just a halt in the field.
Right.
But it became a staging post for the British Army.
Right.
And they were guarding the railway line and sending mounted infantry. They
Yeah.
were really at
Yeah.
that point. And they were going up the railway line to make sure that Brother Boer hadn't put explosives on it before
Right.
the trains went through.
Right.
So you had to check that every day.
Was it because it was easier for them to dock ships on the west coast than take them all the way down to Cape Town? Is that?
Well, they were at Cape Town.
Mhm.
The British Army start the invasion of, for want of a better word, to sort it all out when the Boers besieged those three towns, Ladysmith, Kimberley, and the other one. They start at Cape Town.
Right.
Because the British Army has a garrison at Cape Town,
Right.
Maitland Camp.
Okay.
That's where all the troops were.
Okay.
And they had 4 days acclimatising in Maitland before they went anywhere up country, because at sea it would still have been very warm at sea. But when you consider that they've come with horses,
Yeah.
and you're with horses on a transport,
Yeah.
and you've had to coal, and you've also had to feed and exercise those horses
Wow.
as best you can on a ship
Wow.
for 25 days.
Wow.
And some of the young men didn't make it, of course.
Mm.
So we do have photos of the Anglo-Boer War, and we have an amusing story. Well, it depends which side of the fence you live on. But if you'd sided with the rebels,
Yeah.
you might be a bit confused as to why you could find yourself on a farm with several thousand acres of sheep,
Yeah.
and you might be a widow. As actually happened, there was a widow and she had a fairly large farm. Her nearest town is 200 miles away,
Okay.
and she's on the Northern Cape Province border with Orange Free State.
Okay.
And she's chosen to side with the rebels, and she's a bit perplexed as she goes for a ride on a horse, and she finds the Warwick Imperial Yeomanry camped on her land.
Wow.
And the chances of you finding her farmhouse, unless you knew where it was,
Yeah.
is pretty slim, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very slim
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah.
And the chances of her finding them was equally slim,
Yeah.
because she had a very large
Vast.
farm, a vast tract of land.
Mm.
It's Maynard Hunt, who's the quartermaster, who's writing about it, and he says in his diary that she suddenly realised there were two sides to the argument.
Right.
There has to be two sides to the argument.
There's always two sides.
There's at least two, yes,
Yes.
at least two.
We won't go to war unless we have a side to bat for.
Yes, precisely.
I went to war in Angola in
You
1987
did. Well, then you
as
know
part of
all
my
about
national
it.
service,
Yes,
so
yes.
I've been there. Yeah.
We have my view is we have armies to keep the Queen's or King's peace.
Mhm.
We have armies to defend our country. We don't go to war unless we absolutely have to. And when all else fails, then we go to war. Now, my soldiering is in the 60s and 70s, which
All
is
right.
the Cold War,
Yes.
the quiet period.
Yeah.
The only thing was Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
and that you wouldn't want to be there.
No, that was awful.
Awful place. So, yes, it's a very sad that people can't live harmoniously together.
Agreed.
Why can't we just forget about the differences of opinion and
Yeah.
accept that people are people and they're entitled to have their views?
Well, and we're all sort of the essence of God's creation. So, we're
Precisely,
sort of
yes.
fighting
Yeah.
ourselves when we go to war with our brother.
Precisely. Yes, we are.
I noticed you were using the term brother Boer.
Brother Boer,
yes,
yes,
that's on
brothers,
purpose, yes.
Well, there you are. So for my sins, I'm the archivist. Forgive me, but I spent probably 50 or 60 years studying British military history.
Oh, really?
So in my spare time.
Oh, right.
Because I was a TA soldier, a territorial army,
Yes.
who run around at weekends.
Yeah.
And spend time in an office during the week.
Right.
So you have two worlds that you switch
Yes,
from one
right.
to the other.
Yeah.
Whereas you went probably into the regular forces.
Yeah,
And so you did that for your national service.
Yes.
One of our team is 96, and he was with the 3rd Hussars as
Ah.
national service in 1947,
Really?
and he thoroughly enjoyed the national service bit.
Mm.
He came out and didn't enjoy civilian life and went back into the army.
Right.
and couldn't get it out of his system.
Yeah.
Can't get it out of his system,
Yeah.
even at 96.
Yeah.
He's comes here.
Right.
He comes here for the social interaction.
Right.
Anyway, there you are. So the Boer War, for what it's worth, is here. I'm sorry, I've said far too much. Really.
No, you haven't at all. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Philip. Just on the Cold War, for me as a youngster, 19 years old, when I went to war in Angola, I felt like we were in the hot part of the Cold War, because it really was a communist versus capitalist affair. You know, the Russians were supporting the government of Angola, and the Americans were supporting Jonas Savimbi, the leader or the rebel. In terms of the Boer War, you know, I have this perspective. I mean, I'm English born. My father's a Yorkshireman. I was born in Dorset, but raised in South Africa. So I sort of have a foot in both camps. They call us soappeeler. Which is rather rude, but it means that you've got one foot in Africa, the other foot in Europe, and your middle member is hanging in the ocean, which is why they call you a salt peel, salt dick. But there are Afrikaans people that you encounter today who still have a real anger with the British. They're like even a dare I say a hatred in the oldest community, where you know they feel that it was almost. Imperialism, you know, it was like there was this they had their own nation, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal Republic, and then the British came in based on something to do with gold or something to do with wanting the South Africa under its wing, and so they forced through, you know, the biggest conquest.
Cecil Rhodes and the Jameson affair.
Yeah.
Which is just the prelude to the Second World War, isn't it?
Yeah. And interestingly, here's just a little tidbit. I grew up in Durban, as I said, and I went to a school, high school, and all my history classes were given in a town called Pinetown. Pinetown is adjacent to a neighborhood called New Germany.
Yes.
New Germany was the place of a concentration camp, or a World War concentration camp, and they never got a whisper of that through all my history class. They never said, oh, by the way, during the Boer War there was a concentration camp in your neighbouring village, town.
I went to Germany in the Bad Harz Mountains in about 62, and I come out of school in, that's right, 64 I went to Sonnenberg after I'd come out of school. I stayed for a sixth form. And I went to what was the equivalent of a Rotary International youth conference at Sonnenberg in the Bad Harz Mountains. And in the 1960s, there was still this group of people in Germany who weren't prepared to accept the Holocaust had happened. There were others who were hiding behind the fact that they knew about it, but they didn't want to talk about it. And there were it was all done with headphones and interpreters, and it was probably several hundred young people. But unbeknown to me, until I found it later, Sonnenberg had actually been a concentration camp.
Right.
So, but it had all been tarted up and made to look really as if it was Tweed.
Right. Yeah.
But it was in the Bad Harz Mountains.
Right.
I do recall that the best part about the conference was going for a beer in the mountains and coming out of the beer cellar and the cold air hit you. Because you'd had too much to drink, and it hit you. You knew all about it. The other thing was going down a gold mine to visit a gold mine, because the Bad Harz was where there were gold mines. But it was a journey that took several days, because you went to Hook of Holland by boat, Harwich to Hook of Holland, across Holland to Austria, and then down into Germany by train.
Yes.
Staying on the train for more or less 2 days.
Wow.
And it was a good experience for a youngster to meet people from other countries, which I think was important.
Because actually we have much more in common than we do against each other, you know. And I think that as you said earlier, you know, why do we continue to conflate situations such that we go to war? And there's that sort of biblical idea of the 7 deadly sins, which is the greed and the avarice, you know, all of those things that perhaps are being tweaked to get us into a state where we would go to war with our brother. And of course I walked through that myself, so I understand how I was tweaked to believe that there was this existential threat that we needed to do to defend against.
Had you been a missionary in Kenya, my godfather was a brigade major just before, during the First World War, 1939, he's brigade major. He got the brigade going in the wrong direction at Catterick, and they sent him on Salisbury Plain. They got the brigade going in the wrong direction, Salisbury Plain, and they sent my future godfather to Catterick to spend the war at Catterick, because he was a liability. But Uncle Roy became a missionary
Okay.
And he spent his, after the war, he spent time in Kenya. And of course, he's there during the Mau Mau business.
Really?
And he didn't enjoy that. And
No.
eventually got kicked out of Kenya. So you've got a situation where British colonial rule had its advantages, but it also had its disadvantages. And look, we were having this conversation yesterday with somebody else. You think in terms of people who were living in mud huts
Yeah.
in the 1880s,
Yeah.
who today can now, or their relations, or their new the ancestors were living in mud huts, but now they're in universities.
Yes.
And the transition
Yes.
is quite immense. But what Roy sent me the best book in the world when I got to 21, and I think you might appreciate it. He said it was the Bible, and he said if you got hungry, you could eat it. It was on rice paper. That's good.
Very good.
I'm going to show you something because we've got some photo albums here of Africa, and we'll bring them out and have a look at them. Now get the keys. So one was
Okay, Philip.
I'm sorry, it's probably taking up too much of your time.
Not at all. I'm enjoying the exchange
Well,
very much.
my father was a regular army soldier. He commanded 2 squadrons of tanks in Italy during the Second World War.
Really? I was a tanker in the Angolan
You
War.
were a tank man.
I wrote a book about it.
You did?
Yes. We were involved in one particular battle on the 3rd of October 1987 where my squadron destroyed a brigade. Militarily, it's a matter of historical fact.
Yes. My father was an infantry officer converted to tanks.
Okay.
And he's only commented about Alamein, because this regiment fought at Alamein.
Right.
He wasn't in this regiment, it was another mob. His view was about Alamein, dusty tank battle, my boy, go and read about it. And that was it.
A dusty tank battle. My boy, go read about it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, as you're a tank person,
Yeah.
we want really to give you a souvenir of your trip to Warwick.
Yeah.
I'll get these out. These are quite unique. Don't get old.
No, well,
Try to stay young.
it happens to
Stay
the
young
best of
for.
us.
What we have to do is we have to remain young at heart.
That's exactly right. Innocence as the child.
Here you are, volume 1. Okay, so some of these photographs you'll find in our museum website.
Throw a light on that.
They're lovely photos. And he was. So this is them arriving, or at least part of the
Right.
journey. This is part of the
Leaving
journey. And they could-
Southampton.
Yes, leaving Southampton, from Southampton, not Liverpool. It was the other contingent. This is the second yeomanry contingent. The first yeomanry contingent left from Liverpool.
Right.
This is the second line regiment. This is the 101st Company.
Right.
The 5th Battalion. Sorry, correction. 5th Company, 2nd Battalion, Imperial Yeomanry.
Wow.
Yeah, they're lovely photos.
Wow.
Good morning, welcome to the museum. Welcome to
Awesome
the museum.
carriage, eh?
You're in the
Have you
foundations
ever
of
seen the
much
castle
earlier
in
building.
Cape Town? It's a monstrous building.
I'm not from here.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeomanry.
Yeomanry.
A yeoman is a Saxon farmer. Now that's a yeoman back in Saxon times.
Oh.
A yeoman, a
In Table
yeoman
Mountain.
farmer. As much as I dislike it, you have a class structure in this country. In the 18th and 19th century, you have that class structure.
Yep.
Yeomen tended to own their own farms.
Ah, yeah.
And so yeomanry come into being in 1794 because of the
What a
threatened
treat.
invasion from France.
Yeah.
And
Hope you're
also
enjoying.
civil unrest in this country. So you have unrest in Europe as well in the 1790s. Much of the British Army is elsewhere. It's in the Pyrenees, it's all over the place in India. and
Look at that.
So they strengthen the militia.
You got to see the
Had
buildings
your ID
that were
here,
built before this
in Elizabethan times,
crowd
you
turned
would
up.
have been, as a chap, you'd have been in the militia. Your father would have been in the militia in Elizabethan times. And the militia existed right up until the 1880s, and then they become part of regular forces. So it's a volunteer cavalry regiment.
All depends on which
They didn't
program
do any
you're running
training
as to who
during
you,
the harvest period.
Oh, yes,
they're
that
farmers.
they
who
need
you
to-
support on this, you know, of
I'm
course.
going to let you walk around and enjoy it, and I'll catch up with you when you've had a chance to walk around. But think of it as the collective memory. everything in here has a link to the past. So as you walk in there, you're walking on 12th, 14th century flagstones, for example.
They had to have the cape, I think, because of the access to the
Cross Keys Tower.
access to the
Prior to 16.
the story goes about the gold,
Warwick in
but actually I think it's to do with the Antarctic
Here we have
access point.
the courthouse.
That's what I
And
think.
let you walk around and enjoy it. Okay? Cheers. You'll find quite a lot of these photos on the museum history pages.
Well, I intend going to have a look at that,
Yes,
Philip.
here we are. It's in number 7. In this number 7.
Okay.
There you are. There's,
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate your time.
this is the book to look out for. That's the book to look out for.
Okay.
You'll get it as in Amazon or WWA books. It's
Okay.
as a reprint these days.
Okay.
Oh, look, you've got young people coming in. Good morning. Hello. Welcome to the museum. Now, do you like horses or bears? Oh, which do you prefer? Do you like horses or bears? You like bears? Right. You like bears? Right. Well, bear is our capital. Shall we also look at one of the
Just
museum
find some
trustees?
construction before 1901 and have a look at how they don't match.
And for my sins, I'm the museum trust secretary, so I run the affairs of the IC. So
If there's any images in here.
we have lots of bears. Here's a bear, for example. Now the challenge is, as you go around, count the number of bears you see in your head. Bearing in mind, we've also got a bear here. So you've seen 2 bears.
Sorry about the shading.
And if you go
Shadows.
here, there's a 3rd bear. What a 4th bear. There. Another one. And a great bear.
You alright to go down?
And we also have Paddington Bear in here.
Paddington.
First aid, the Red Cross.
Okay, because the Queen was very friendly with Paddington Bear, wasn't she?
Yes.
She was indeed, and they had, what did they have? Marmalade.
Marmalade,
pictures.
yeah.
Do you like marmalade
See that?
sandwiches?
Yeah, marmalade.
I mean,
Terrible loss of life on all sides and the way people were treated.
Upstairs arrives in 1725. In 1693, the Great Fire War, and the town is on fire, and they used the foundations of this building to build upstairs.
Yeah, well, fascinating.
Here is a few kitchens.
I was about to take a sip of that coffee.
So just be careful on the floor because it's slightly uneven.
I have to find some coins to leave in there.
terms of
In their You know, this gentleman will probably be a Freemason, but you know, doesn't. Well, thank you, Philip.
There are four. I'll pull one more out for you to have a quick look.
Oh, thank you.
The Boer War is in the main area.
All right, I'll go and have a little.
Here we are. This is the 100. I think it's the 101st. They are. That's 101st company from memory.
Okay.
But this is amazing, isn't it? Crossing a river.
Wow. They had some real hardships, those men.
They did, and they were a different breed of person.
Yes.
They were farming people. They had a sense of duty,
Yes.
which regrettably is not always found in young people today.
No.
Here is a most amusing story. Here is Trooper Edward. Oh gosh, I'll have to pull it out. I'll get it out. I'll get it out for you and have a quick look.
Okay.
You'll find it on our website. I'll get it out. It's here. I've got them counting bears.
So these are Boers, are they?
No, they're the enemy. Yeah, they're the prisoners. They're prisoners.
Right.
They're Boers, yes.
Okay, just give me 1 minute.
Trooper Edward Reading must have met Queen Alexandra, who was the wife of Edward VII.
Wow.
Because Reading is caught in an ambush and lies out overnight. There are 14 Warwickshire Imperial Yeomen, and they're ambushed by the Boers as they're approaching a farmhouse at night time.
Right.
And they're all wounded, and the horse is laid on him. And the whole story can be found in our website.
Okay.
But at some stage, he finally gets back to the UK in about 1902, 1903, and Queen Alexandra sends him a letter confirming that, having met him, that she's prepared to give him 6 guineas for an artificial leg, because he's had his leg removed,
Amputated, yeah.
and this was attached to his artificial leg.
Ha!
So he must
Wow.
be. So how many soldiers have you come across
Yeah.
that have actually got a plaque
On there.
presented by the Queen?
Wow.
That's
incredible.
An incredible story.
Yes.
And he must have dined out on that.
Can
Quite
I
a lot.
can I hold it a moment?
Yeah, there you are. And this
That's
is his.
beautiful.
This is his Boer War. Well, his Anglo. You see, because he didn't stay long. He's wounded in 1900. So he's seriously not. Yes, 1901 he's wounded. So he doesn't get the 1902 clasp.
Right.
He's not there.
Right.
He's in hospital.
Yeah.
And he's not on active duty.
Yeah.
So only gets 4 clasps instead of 5.
Okay.
There you are. So,
Very
so far
interesting.
too much.
So I love it, and thanks so much, Philip.
Hello.
I think
Hello.
this is my
Nice to
wife.
Meet you. Yes.
So this gentleman that I was talking to over there, sorry I didn't catch his name.
I'm Philip.
And
that's Adrian in there.
Adrian, his grandfather, what did he say?
Yes, his grandfather is here.
fought in the Boer War.
Yes,
Really?
and his other, and one of his relations also fought and lost his life while serving with the machine gun battalion. This regiment had the misfortune to be cavalry in Palestine and in 1917, but in April 1918 they were in Egypt, and the brigadier said to them he was sending the best of the brigade to the Western Front, and the Warwickshire Yeomen were seen as the best of the brigade.
Right.
So they suddenly became machine gunners
Right. Okay.
instead of being cavalry.
Okay.
And they were thoroughly pissed off about that. Well, you would be as well.
Yes. Yes. Well,
They were
we.
used as ranging fire to keep the enemy's heads down, so that the attacks could go
Right,
in
right.
with the ranging fire over the top of
Yeah.
over the heads of the
Yeah.
so your infantry are advancing
Yes.
and over the heads.
We were doing the same thing in '87 in Angola.
So there you are. That's yours.
Thank you, Philip. You said earlier that the young people of today don't
Not all
have
of
that
them.
same sort of loyalty. Or
Not all of them.
no, I agree with you. But I wanted to ask you this question, which is that who should our loyalty be to?
To family.
What about God?
Yes, if you believe in God, yes.
Yeah,
There's-
or Creator.
Yes, I think
Yes.
so too. Because okay, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
When you first wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
you have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
That's important because your inner self is reminding you that you've got certain obligations and
Yeah.
duties to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so off you go and you do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you have responsibilities, you'd want to do them correctly.
Yeah.
Because if you have a responsibility, say, to run a place like this,
Yeah.
or even a local authority budget, which I
Mhm.
had responsibility for,
Mhm.
then you didn't want to let the side down.
Correct.
So you start from that premise,
Yeah.
and you build on everything else.
Yeah.
And both you and I certainly I swore an oath of allegiance to serve Her Majesty the Queen. And I'm not sure whether you would have
Something
something
similar
similar for South Africa.
To the Republic.
Yes, for the
Yeah.
Republic,
Yeah.
something similar.
Yeah.
But you start, you don't want to let the side down.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm not deeply religious, but I would suggest to you, and it's something I wrote years ago, that what we do today and all our tomorrows should be such that it helps to improve the quality of life for others. And that says everything.
I agree.
You don't have to be deeply religious.
No.
You don't have to stand in a church.
No.
You can actually believe in your maker,
Yeah.
whoever that maker is,
Yes.
because there are different religions.
Sure.
Yes.
And you have to accept that people from different cultures will have differing views.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why can't we still live harmoniously together, acknowledging that we have differing views?
Yes.
And the trouble is that greed comes into it.
Yeah.
Totally.
You've got the oil, I want the oil.
Yes.
And that's part of the problem.
Yes.
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 That's a great summary.
Well, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I tend to agree with where
Well,
you're at, and
yes.
if we could share, if we understood our shared heritage or our shared
Yes.
commonality,
Yes.
then we would work towards that, right? And if I've got the oil, then I'll be okay. How can I share that? Because we're all equally inheritors of the earth.
Precisely. Well, I worked in local government. I was a principal accountant and I ran a departmental budget. And at one point, I ran the Warwickshire Social Services
Right.
budget for the whole of the county,
Right.
and that was quite a responsibility. We had
Yeah.
24 old folks' homes and children's homes and foster parents and a whole range of different services, and never enough money to go round, and lots of staff, and you're there as the bank manager in the cupboard, as I was
Yes.
accused of being, because you're expected to come up with the answers.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have been in a situation where you have a split second to make a decision.
Yeah.
And in local government, sometimes you're faced with a question where the man says to you afterwards, and how long have you been talking about this or thinking about this? And I said, in the space of time you asked me the question. Now that is, and if you can come up with the right answers and then go away and be told to do it, that's even better still.
Yeah.
And if you can actually achieve it, like this was put together. I signed the Heritage Lottery funding submission jointly with the Town Council and our Museum Trust to get megabucks out of Heritage Lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And so we come out, we're here in 2012, meeting the Heritage Lottery Queen, with the town clerk saying to me, for God's sake, don't say anything untoward about what's wrong with this building. Okay? 10 years down the road, in 2014, this building was renovated.
Okay.
By 2014 we renovated, we got the Heritage Lottery funding, and we were back by August 2014 as a regimental museum, functioning again with a team of volunteers. Now, that only happened because everybody serving in the team believed that they owed something to the person who established this museum. And you'll have served with a colonel, you may have even been a colonel, but you'll have served with a colonel who you respected. You respected him for what he was, and you didn't want to let the side down.
Absolutely.
So there you are. That sort of sums us up.
Yeah.
You do it because the colonel expected the best, and you wouldn't want second best. So it's for you to decide whether this is a real regimental museum or just a conglomeration of odds and ends.
Thank you
What do you
very much,
think?
Philip. Well, I think it is the museum. I think it's beautiful.
The
And,
museum
it's
comes
amazing.
alive when we talk about it.
Yes.
But
Totally.
we shouldn't over talk about it.
But we should also not forget, and I'm really about putting our elders, and I'm moving into that season of my life, but putting our elders in the place of that they hold the stories, they hold the wisdom, that if we don't listen, it's going to be lost,
Yes,
And
you're
we'll
right.
make the same mistakes.
and we will make the same mistakes.
Well, my father thought when I went into local government, and you might laugh about this, you only had to be alive and breathing.
Oh, really?
He was right. He says, no.
Is there 109?
I'm sorry?
Is there 109?
I think there's more like, we're horses or two, we're bears, aren't we? Well, there's about
Want to
250.
come and meet Adrian?
There are 250 bears.
No, I'm not counting
You're
anymore.
not counting anymore.
I'm not counting.
Oh.
Well,
Excuse me a second while
No,
I give
you-
these young people something.
thank you.
As you've been such good young people, can I give you
Do you want to come and meet Adrian?
Will you sign?
He might be talking, but I thought, since his grandfather was in the Boer War, and I couldn't find it easy, so.
We reduced the borders, not trade borders, land borders. Because I went
Pomp
on my
and circumstance.
Bavaria on a coach
So
train.
he was telling me about what happened was the farmhands, they could only become troops. It was the earls and could afford to buy, they would buy the higher ranks.
Oh, really?
They were allowed the higher ranks.
It's always been like that.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Most of the troubles of the world were stemmed from Europe. And it was a good thing to reduce, and let's get friendlier with so-and-so. Dialogue, exactly, good lovely word. So I was all for the European Economic Community. Then we have this European Union. And they did announce that they were going to have, so many million civil servants. You don't need millions of civil servants to do what you do in your own countries anyway.
Yes.
I started to get a bit anti-sort of Europe. Although I'm European, I've worked
Well,
in quite a few countries.
What do you make of it?
I like Europe.
It's a really...
Imagine taking this apart in 14 days. Packing it.
Wow.
It only comes about because you have a team of people who are prepared to work with you and who have that same degree of respect.
Yes.
You put it into civilian life, and a civilian that is paid by a local authority that has never been anywhere near an army uniform
Yeah.
might have a totally different viewpoint about this.
Yes. Yes. But this is because this is a labour of love, really.
Well,
It's
this
a-
is something that is. My daughter says to me, "When are you going to stop, Dad?" And I said, "Well, only when I've gone somewhere else."
Yes. Because your heart is in it.
My predecessor was 96
Wow.
when he died.
Wow.
And he rang me up 3 or 4 days before he passed away and he said, is there space in the museum for my medals? And I said, of course there is, Brian. And we put medals in a special display case. Brian was one of these people who was reticent and wouldn't talk about soldiering at all. He landed on D-Day +1.
Right.
He
Okay.
never talked about it.
Okay.
But he left a diary. So there you are. You're going to give him a military funeral. He died intestate, and we sorted his affairs out. But we gave him a proper military funeral, as befitting a person who deserved it.
Yeah.
And I did the eulogy.
Oh, lovely.
And we talked about what it was like to land on D-Day +1. And Brian gave me the notes because it was there in his diary. And Brian says in his diary that the Royal Navy was late. So here you are bobbing around in the English Channel for 48 hours before you land. You're supposed to land on D-Day itself, but you're D-Day +1. And he said the Royal Navy was late. So there you are in the tank landing craft with a DD tank, which is waterproofed, and you're about to land on Gold Beach. And there's a man at the front of the tank landing craft testing the depth of the seabed as you go in. And when they get closer in, so they drop the ramp. There are a few choice words said because the water comes in. Brian is the tank driver at that point, and off they go in their Sherman tank in the general direction of the beach, having switched from traction to propellers.
Right.
And away he goes, and that's his war. That's the start of his war. He's
Right.
19 years of age.
Wow.
And here he is, 96 years of age, saying to me, when I asked him, because we kept him away from the refurbished museum in 2014 until it was ready, it'll do. This will do. That's all he said. This will do. So it's for you to decide whether it'll do.
Thank you, Philip.
Well, it's extraordinary.
Fantastic story.
And the field gun is even better still.
Yes.
I spent 5 years studying the history of the cavalry charge. And the cavalry charge is the last classic unsupported cavalry charge to capture guns. Put yourself on a horse. Your horse is your friend. Your horse may or may not make it that day. There are 190 men on horseback. 110 horses do not survive.
Wow.
So think of it from the perception of the horse.
Yeah.
And you may never, well, you might have ridden a horse in South Africa, but your horse is your friend and it's your mode of transport.
Well, I mucked out 3 horse stables this morning,
Well, there you are.
actually, and I
Yes.
have an affinity with the horse, and I can understand why people love their horses like people love their dogs.
Yes, my wife was the head girl of the Heathrow Hunt before I married her,
Uh-huh.
and she had 40 horses and 10 girls to look after.
Right.
Oh yes, and
Wow.
and my daughter rides, and
Right.
so I ride as well, but we don't have any horses. My daughter has horses,
Okay.
but that's enough. This is the cavalry charge. It takes about 3 minutes to explain the cavalry charge, but this is the Lady Butler painting, and it's more or less accurate.
Wow.
You have, if you step back to April 1917,
Like Gaza.
at Gaza. The fog was the fog. There was a sea mist coming off the sea, and the fog got up, and the British Army was supposed to encircle, and the Australians, New Zealand was supposed to encircle Gaza and cut the railway line. It didn't work. You've got position warfare between mid-April 17, all the way down almost to Beersheba, which is there. Beersheba is captured on the 31st of October by the 4th Australian Light Horse Brigade, armed with bayonets on horseback.
Wow.
And they're just taking out Beersheba.
Wow.
And there are 2 disparate Turkish infantry brigades there. And that opens up a gap. Lawrence Arabia is here in the desert, moving in the general direction of Jerusalem and then up to Damascus. The Hajj is here. This is the headquarters of the Turkish 8th Army,
Okay.
officered by German officers and advisors. Here are 2,000 Turkish infantry with machine guns badly positioned, more machine guns here, howitzers there, and mountain guns which are in this area.
Wow.
You've got 190 men here on horseback. This is captured around about midday. The general is a New Zealander, crosses the valley in a Ford Model T car, has a discussion with the colonel who's come back from the officers' patrol, and he asked him if he's prepared to take on the guns. The guns are firing this way, and they're firing 8 kilometres, and impeding the advance of the 60th London Division, which would be in that room if the map was extrapolated.
Right.
And over here is the Australian Army, Australian Light Horse, are 3 to 4 miles that way. Suffice to say, they set off in half squadrons at the gallop with the hunting horns going, and they break up into 4 attacking formations, 1 to go round the back, 2 to take out infantry, 2, 3 and 4 coming at the same time. And that's what you see in the picture
Right.
there.
Storming it, they're going uphill as well. Is
They're
this the
going
high
downhill.
point? Oh, is that into a bay?
They're going up, going uphill this way. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. But this is called the flatlands.
Okay.
But they've had to come up to that. Yes, you're right. They override the guns and ride through them. The Turkish guns are manned by Austrian-Hungarian gunners who are hiding under the wheels.
Really?
The infantry panic because one young man gets hold of a machine gun and puts it on the infantry.
Turns it on them, yeah.
And they go in that direction.
Okay.
There's enough water in these horses that are left to get up there. And in it's Wavell who says in the Palestine campaign, which is probably the best book to read, written in the 20s, Wavell becomes the field marshal. But Wavell at this point is a colonel. And he's reporting back to the chief of the Imperial General Staff, Robertson. Robertson is the field marshal who rises from private soldier to field marshal. Okay. He's a gifted soldier. Wow. Drank water, he didn't drink in the mess. But Wavell says that in their haste to escape, the German and Turkish signallers failed to pick up the code books. And that explains why the war in Palestine takes off, because nobody changes the codes.
And so they know.
And that explains why the war is so fast. Because here you are, 8th of November, and that's the 13th of November, and you're in Jerusalem by 6th or 9th of December.
Wow.
Sorry, I've said far too much.
No, not at all, Philip. Now, is this the final months of the Ottoman Empire?
It's the beginning of it. It's the real beginning.
Right.
You've had the Ottomans tried to cross the Suez Canal, 3 disparate columns across the Sinai Desert, and got one at Kantara, one in the middle, and one down the bottom.
Right.
And they tried to cross the Suez Canal. They dragged pontoons and things.
Right.
But they hadn't bargained on the Royal Navy and other what they found in the canal, and nobody really got across.
Right.
So that was in 15. 16, there's fighting in the Sinai Desert. It's nasty. And in 17, by April, they're here at Gaza.
Right.
And where all the problems are today is where the Warwickshire Yeomanry were, in this area along here.
The Gaza Strip
the
and
Gaza Strip,
all of that.
where those problems are.
And it says South Africa here. Is that because the South Africans were involved by them?
No, that's the battle. Those are the battle honours.
Oh, I see.
Battle honours. You would have had battle honours as well.
Yeah.
But when you touch this, you make a connection with the young man who didn't come home.
Okay.
And that, I think, is important, because you touch it, and that's Toby.
Right.
And if you want to know what Toby looked like, here is Toby today. If he was alive, he'd be about 130. If he was alive. There's Toby.
Hey, Toby.
And then he went to Eton. Okay. And that's his Bible. So he's Sealy. And
wow.
And this is his shaving stuff.
Wow.
Go to war with shaving gear like that. And of course, he'd have a man. He'd have a bodyguard. Now, when you were serving in the forces, did you have somebody to look out for you?
No.
You had to look out for yourself.
Only the very senior officers had some of that.
A bodyguard, yeah.
But us, no.
No. We have a Lawrence of Arabia connection here. Have you read 7 Pillars of Wisdom?
No.
Well, if you do manage to read it, you'll find reference to Lloyd and Thorne.
Okay.
Lloyd is really Sir George Lloyd, and later Lord Lloyd. Lord Lloyd is Governor General of Bombay after the war. But Lloyd is part of the Arab Intelligence Bureau with Lawrence. And Lloyd is a diplomat. Thorne is a private soldier who left a diary. And we have the diary here, and it reveals something of the war that the two of them experienced, because they're part of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, part of carving up the Middle East.
Okay.
And the Middle East is carved up wrong.
It is carved up.
It's all wrong.
Yes.
It was carved up wrong in 1919, and again it was carved up again wrong in the 40s.
Right.
47, 48, that sort of time. All the troubles that's going on in the world today.
Shocking. The Balfour Declaration comes to mind.
Yes, that's right.
And I think that the little bit I know about the way they carved up the Middle East, you've got Wahhabi, Sunni, Shia, sometimes in a minority, but then they're the ruling party in that area. So it creates a tinderbox, really.
They were tribal. I mean, we're not supposed to. I don't go with this woke business. The war happened. What happened. We can't apologise for the past. Why should we apologise for the mistakes of our grandparents?
Yes.
Or even our brothers' mistakes. No, it happened.
Yes.
We can learn from it. And hopefully people will, when they've been here, they'll go away and think about what these young people experienced when they went on that great adventure in 1914-18 to Palestine, well, Egypt, and then eventually into Palestine. When you consider that this regiment is a farming regiment, volunteers, people who farmed the land or worked with horses, and they'd never been more than 10 or 15 miles from their nearest village. A lot of them, unless they were the officers, but they wouldn't have gone to London. They wouldn't know what London looked like until they got there. And the notion of having a holiday or even a sea trip, a sea voyage for 15 days, unbelievable.
Yeah, because you're quite far from the coast here, aren't you? So.
Yeah, but the notion of going to war and spending 15 days looking after horses at sea, and then fighting a war in the Middle East, and then some of them ending up in Gallipoli as infantry. They didn't all come home. And those that did come home weren't necessarily all right up here.
Yeah.
I spent 10 years in Legion head office, so I understand what involuntary capacity again, elected. So I understand what the Legion is supposed to do, and it's not about marching up and down looking pompous.
No.
It's about helping the less fortunate person.
Yes.
Going back to what I said, what we do today and all that tomorrow should be such that it helps.
Yeah. Post-traumatic stress is a thing.
Yeah,
People...
we experienced that. I think we experienced that when we put the 50th anniversary of D-Day on in 1994. We had Viscount Cranbourne and the Minister of Defence, youngsters coming down. Never Cranbourne was talking about celebrating D-Day. Yes, celebrating.
Right.
This country was talking about celebrating D-Day. And there was a young man, a gentleman stood alongside me after we listened to His Lordship giving the presentation, and this an MOD soldier, MOD person who'd never been near a uniform. This MOD person tried to explain what it's like to be at D-Day. And we said to His Lordship, two of us up a corner, if you continue to use the word celebrate, my friend Horace here, who was on a tank landing, with the Royal Marines on a landing craft, guarding the Mulberry Harbours, bobbing around in the sea, in bad weather conditions, he'd probably take you outside and punch you, because it's not celebrating, it's commemorating.
Yeah.
And the government changed tack when Cranbourne finally got back to Parliament and reported in. But to begin with, it was all going to be celebration, which is a nonsense.
Yes.
You can't.
No.
It's remembrance. This is about remembrance.
Absolutely.
But you don't have to push it down people's throats.
Absolutely. And because we are brothers, I should honour those that fell on either side of that conflict.
Yes, precisely.
That's how I feel about my conflict.
Yes, but what we have on the Western Front is that the German cemeteries are very quiet, and there's less life. There's less life in the German cemeteries. It's almost as if they're trying to apologise.
That's right. There was a psychological trauma for the Germans, feeling that they were the aggressor, they were they were in the wrong in that situation. So they've taken that on collectively. I mean, I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and I was 20 by the time there was the first democratic election was being, Mandela coming out in 91, and so for me it was like that was never my thing. I was raised in that situation, but I'm not responsible for it.
I'm fortunate. My father was county organiser young farmers, so we here in Warwickshire, and he'd been in the army, and he wanted to stay in the army. Mother didn't want that, and so he did the next best thing. He couldn't farm himself, so he became the county organiser. So we knew the farming community, and we met people from nearly every country in the world. And as a youngster, we had people staying with us from nearly every country in the world, and so you began to understand differing viewpoints. You could see it, and you could hear it, and sometimes you met people who you wouldn't want to call your bedfellow, you wouldn't want to be with them for any length of time. But in the main, they were all really nice people. And maybe that was the right thing to do, to actually meet them head on and try to explain something about British culture whilst accepting that their cultures are different.
Yes. But whilst you and I might be able to find common ground and be able to sit around the fire of an evening, we are sort of we're at the lower ranks of who is making the power decisions. you know, and so oftentimes you will get caught up. And I use the football analogy, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
if a football man, you're part of an Arsenal or a Warwick, you know, football club, but there's a manager and there's an accountant or whatever who says, yes, we can buy this player or we have to sell this player, and we're going to go and, you know, do that thing. And you as a supporter of the team, eventually you will jump on board with the new acquisition or the sale of the old one or whatever. And that's really where I try to avoid becoming embedded in a team, because as I said earlier on, as a Soatpeel, I'm meant to have one foot in Africa and one foot in Europe, and you know, why can't I just balance the two rather than saying I have to choose Manchester over Liverpool or
I don't
whatever?
follow a football team. I played rugby, but I don't. For these days, I don't play sport. I can't run any longer as I used to.
Yeah.
And partly because I spend too much time sitting behind a desk or sitting in here and doing. But I like gardening and I like the fresh air. But you're right. It's far better to be yourself rather than to try and be something that you're not.
Yes, or someone else's supporter, as it were.
Yes, and I don't go with that. I mean, yeah, one votes. I think in this country everybody should vote. There should be on the voting slip. Don't agree with any of these. Tick, don't agree with any of them.
Yeah.
But you can vote. Well, the danger of having proportional representation in this country, you could end up with all the wrong people.
Yes.
I think it's first past the post is probably the best.
Yeah.
But when you get too many small parties,
Yeah.
then they've got to have coalitions of some sort.
That's right.
But another way of looking at it, maybe Parliament is really about once you're there, it doesn't matter when you're there, you're there for the benefit of the people in the country, not for a political party.
However, you know, like we saw with the Europe EU sort of arrangement, that the further away and the higher up the tower the government and the controllers are, the less invested they are in your town.
Yes, precisely.
And so sort of once upon a time, you know, governance was held in county-sized pockets, and so what you got up to in your county and in your town was very much up to the local people, what made sense to them. But control and decision making is being taken further and further away from the local authority. Yes, and so this is where I think we're sort of losing our voice, because if I voted in a European election, you know, that person or that entity has got none of my local Warwick type interests at heart.
Not in the slightest bit interested in Warwick, probably.
No. And so
more interested in a regional perspective.
That's
just
right.
As seeing it as a big whole.
That's right.
Like that, without thinking about what makes it.
That's right. So on two sort of things to end then, you know, one is that I think that the men of today are different from the men of 100 years ago in a large part because we are no longer physically active on the land. The men of 100 years ago were all hard-working men, to the majority, and they all worked with their hands in you know, heavy work, which is what men are designed for. To sit
That's
behind.
why they became good soldiers.
Yes.
Because they spent their life out in the fields,
yes,
in the countryside.
And they were comfortable with the natural order.
And they had a particular style of diet that they enjoyed eating. And they wouldn't necessarily like continental food or foreign food.
No, or even necessarily some of the fast food that we eat today.
They wouldn't have that.
No. So these were men that were far more rugged and more natural, where today men are cosseted, you know, behind a keyboard, softer, you know, and so on. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just observing how things have changed in modernity.
Yes, you're right.
And so I think we're losing something in terms of our own innate authority, because the authority is all the way in Westminster, all the way in Brussels or something like that. It's not local. I'm not, you know, the value in investing all of my voting energy and my power in my local community is diluted because it's actually Westminster making decisions or Brussels making decisions.
And we have here a town council which has parish council status, and yet it's the county town.
Right.
It has Warwick and Leamington is part of a Warwick District Council.
Okay.
And above that is the West Midlands,
Right.
effectively, a region.
Right.
You're right. In the good old days, people that lived in Warwick looked to their town council and looked to their councillors to produce results. Today we have MPs who we may not always agree with their political persuasion, and who are more interested in their careers than they are in the people they're supposed to represent.
And there's a whip. which says, you know, you can or can't vote in this direction, which may or may not work with what Warwick needs.
Yes, precisely.
And this is how I see politics. I was in local government myself, also in social care.
You were in social care?
I was, yeah.
What kind of whereabouts in social care?
Well, in sort of management, change management,
Yes.
service improvement.
Yes, I did developmental work.
Yeah.
I also handled the government grant programme for the local authority from a social service perspective,
Right.
to make sure, A, that what we were asking for was viable, and B, that we'd actually spent it in the purpose for which it was intended.
Yes.
And C, that you could demonstrate to the auditors that it was auditable, and that you weren't going to lose any of that money all the way through.
And there were outcomes or deliverables at the end.
Outcomes, and if you failed to satisfy the requirements of the government auditor or the district auditor, then the local authority was going to lose that money.
Right.
And you didn't want to lose that money.
No.
And you wouldn't want your reputation to go downhill suddenly because you'd clanged.
Yeah.
So now not everybody would be prepared to put themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
Would you? Yeah.
And when you do, you almost, I'm not suggesting this happens all the time, but I got the sniff of sometimes the local authorities, because I worked with a number of authorities as a consultant, the local authorities would be doing a lot to manage the data so that the results that were produced met with the requirements of the allocation or the claim. You know, and we see this in schooling, that, you know, children are being pushed and pushed and pushed to achieve a certain result so that the school gets a 5-star Ofsted rating and so on, because that becomes more important than the actual humans on the ground.
Delivering this,
Human,
yes.
you know.
Yes, and it was hard work, making sure, because when you're planning it, you know what it's like, 3 or 4 year cycle.
Yes.
Here you've got, during the period that I worked up until 2007, you were dealing with a financial year which was 1 year at a time,
right?
Which you're actually planning.
Yeah.
And this museum runs on a 3-year plan.
Cycle.
It's a 3-year plan, and there are different things that occur all the time.
Yeah.
And local authorities should have a bigger financial plan, one that runs, say, for 10 years.
Agreed. I once asked the director of housing, or maybe he was the finance guy in housing in Westminster Council. I said, "What's your 10-year plan for housing?" Yes. 10-year plan? We're only thinking of 3 years ahead because that's our election cycle. You know, that's our, you know, that's these people that are in power now. It should be 10 years because that's, you know, planning requires a long-term, you know, sort of cycle in order to play out what it is you're trying to achieve. But yes, it's only trying to win the vote this time round, and then, you know, worry about the next cycle the next time.
There we are. Sorry, I've said far too much.
Philip,
good to meet you.
So much. Thank you so much.
Please sign our visitors book.
I will do.
And you're welcome to send me an email via our website. You can ask me awkward questions.
Okay.
If you wish. You've got the contact there.
Yes.
I handle research inquiries, which is fascinating.
Yes.
Absolutely fascinating.
Have you ever come across Brigadier Hugh Willing?
No.
He's a friend of mine. He's a former British.
No, I haven't met him. Oh, you must ask
He's a
him.
historian. He does history talks on cruise ships, which I think you'd probably be really good at.
Thank
Have you
you.
seen
Yeah.
Laura anywhere around?
Please sign the visitors book.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I kept him when I shouldn't have.
No, he's.
Do you have any coins for the donation box?
Thank you very much. When it's Father's Day, we see young people at the top of the stairs, and they say, "Oh no, Dad, not another military museum. You've got to come here, Dad." And when they come away, they thoroughly enjoy themselves.
Yes. Well, I know that this is obviously for Dave. It's lovely to talk to someone who, well, I mean, like I said, we enjoy talking to elders who have got all the stories, really, that we need to.
My daughter doesn't fully understand me, but she did see the museum put back together.
Yes.
But what I dislike is the notion. And she says to me occasionally, "And who is tidying this mess up when you're gone, Dad? This is a terrible." I don't like that.
Yes.
I don't like that.
Yes.
No, not going anywhere particular.
Yes.
Not just yet, thank you.
Yes.
No, and the more you do something you love, the longer you'll be here to enjoy it.
Well,
I
and
think
not
so
only
too.
that, you're leaving a legacy, so
Yes.
hopefully
Yes,
someone
Adrian.
will...
How do you do?
someone will
Good,
take
thanks,
the
Adrian. How do you
baton
do?
from when
Yes.
the
Well,
time is right.
getting old.
Happens to the best of us.
I know, that's the trouble. Yeah, we had a very intellectual conversation.
Yes,
with
we
your
spoke about mostly about things that weren't. Well, they are. They're all actually what causes us to go to war, unfortunately, which is the separation. But Adrian's was your grandfather. You said that was in the Boer War.
was in the Boer War in the Warwickshire Yeomanry. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've still got his pocket watch.
Really?
Yeah, and well, I must tell you this then, I'll shut up. The actual fob for his pocket watch, because in the First World War, that's when these things took over. But everybody wore a pocket watch, whether it was in the top pocket or hanging on your waistcoat. And he brought back from South Africa a sixpenny bit, sixpence,
Yes.
silver sixpence,
Yes.
1898, I think, if I remember right. So we got the silver, which was
Yeah.
British,
Yeah.
English,
Yeah.
from a shop in Stratford-upon-Avon, believe it or not. But the actual coin has got Kruger's head on the other side, not Victoria,
Wow.
which you'd think from
Wow.
the. So it must have been a souvenir from when he was down in South Africa in the Yeomanry.
That's a valuable little.
Well, it's going to go in the museum in the end. We just
Okay.
haven't brought it back, and we haven't written out a
I
little
wasn't write a script for it.
little honourable piece of paper to say, rather than my handwriting, which is appalling, it's going to be written beautifully on a typewriter, so people can read it.
Well,
It's going to
much
go in the museum. I'll still own it because it's my grandfather's.
Yes, yes.
But,
Loaned to the museum.
So here's a question that Adrian asked me just when I needed to leave to see where Zizi was. But is that Durban? That was a English
Yeah.
dominated area.
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
it?
would you excuse me a minute? I just
Yes, of course.
It was lovely to have met you.
Yes, very.
Likewise, and
Welcome
well
to
done.
England.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, he's born in Poole.
I was born in Poole,
he's
so I'm not
Oh, yes,
that foreign.
I was born in Kenilworth, I was.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
Kenilworth lad, mate.
All right.
Nice to meet you
Bye-bye.
guys.
Cheers,
Thanks
Philip.
for your
Thanks
time.
so much for your
It's
time.
okay. Nice
Appreciate
meeting
it.
you.
All the best.
Have a look at the website.
I will do.
Very good, love.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
What do you got?
That's what I got.
What do you got?
This is.
Something to eat, or is it?
No, Zizi was a little bit, so we went for a walk looking for an ice cream shop. We couldn't find one, but guess what we found? A crystal shop.
No.
So Zizi bought more crystals, so
Wow.
now he's got crystals from
Wow.
Stratford-upon-Avon, and now he's got crystals from Warwick.
Wow.
That's black tourmaline. What's that, Zizi?
Come on.
That's peacock ore.
Peacock ore. Never heard of it.
And lapis.
And you got lapis lazuli.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well done.
That all cost £8.
Anyway, should we
Wow. Well, thanks, Dan and Adam for gifting us something recently, which we could splash out on some ores. Wow. Well, that was a most interesting conversation. Lots of little nuggets, little tidbits. Not everything I agreed with, but still, it's just fascinating to hear. See, this is an interesting maneuver, so that he doesn't hit that blue car. He has to do this gently. He started a little late. I'm just talking to Luke about driving techniques. Yeah, so that was just such an exciting conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it wasn't too long-winded. If it was, you probably shut off. Hey, we're doing Andrew and I are doing a free masterclass workshop on the 22nd, is it? 22nd of July. It's a Tuesday,
the 22nd at 8 p.m.
8 p.m. I'll put some information out on that, so keep a lookout for that. Just on, healing ourselves, really. Because we've got to heal ourselves, otherwise we're going to continue to go to war with ourselves and others. So there's a window under there. As you can see, even in the modern times, it's such an inconvenience. Why would you want that? Why would you do that? Please, the giving light to the basement. Actually, you can see part of the stonework. Actually, let me get closer. See, the stonework is all the way across here. So that's the sort of beam that's holding up the floor above. So it interferes with the tiny amount of light that's going to get in there. And the inconvenience of water and so on. We're on Castle Street. That must be the castle there. So this is the castle, is it? Yep. Well, wasn't that fantastic? Oh, there's a revenue collector there.
Awesome. Awesome.
This way.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So, I think I've crystal collection now.
You've got an awesome crystal collection.
And I bought 3.
So you added 3 more to your crystal collection.
So, how many did I use?
Well,
Yes, 2.
we got 2 when we were in Stratford-on-Avon the other day, so that's 5. And I know that you've probably got about 6 more in other. We're going to pick up in a few days' time at the other place.
So, I'm going to make a crystal collection. Yes, this is, I think, my first time now being in a talk.
In a talk?
Video.
Yeah, oh, is this not the first time you've been in a video?
No, in a talk.
Oh, yeah. I would have liked for you to come into that museum. It was fascinating. You didn't feel like coming in?
No.
Why not?
Also, I have hiccups.
You have hiccups?
Yeah.
Where do you find them? Where do you pick those
I
up from?
have no idea.
Don't know if we'll be able to get in because it's probably a pay. Don't know. Oh, we've got a security station to get through.
What do you say?
There's like a check your bag station. We don't want to see another bit of theatre like what happened to Donnie Trump. Yeah, I think it's a pay to display. So we might forego the. Huh? Someone going through your bags. That should not be allowed. Looks a bit fake and created. This looks like fakery. This facade looks fake to me. It's not hundreds of years old. It's not hundreds of years old. Oh look, yeah, I'll give you a tour of the castle.
I just want to go home.
Yeah? Okay. Well, we can do that. So where are we? Where are we, Z? Trying to establish, did we just walk in here? No, we're not in this at all. Look at that. It's under the mud. So this is an original house, possibly facaded, which is why the roofs are below this parapet. Oh no, that's where they had to stand with their guns. Oh, look at that door versus that door next to it. Mud. Okay. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah?
Bye.
Bye.